Oftentimes, I hear folks complaining that they just don't know what to knit with their really dark yarns other than just plain stockinette projects. A lot of times you hear things like the design will get lost in the dark stitches, or there's no point in doing all of that work that goes into cabling if it's going to be invisible with really dark yarn. And I am here today to inspire you with 6 sweater designs that challenge that very notion. And so if that sounds like just your cup of tea, get cozy and let's dive in. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Wool Needles Hands Midweek Ramble. My name is Tayler and I will be your host. I recently received an email over at the Wool Needles Hands tip line, which you can find by heading over to woolneedleshands.com/tipline. That's where folks can leave me suggestions for upcoming midweek rambles. And this email regarded what kinds of sweaters this individual could possibly knit with their really beautiful black yarn, because they hear so often that you don't knit textured items with black yarn or dark yarn because it all just gets lost. But this particular viewer and the one who wrote in with this question really wanted to knit something beautifully textured with this dark yarn that they had in their stash. And it had me thinking, why do you only need to knit plain stockinette projects with black yarn? Does the texture really get lost in the dark stitches? And is it even worth all the extra work? And I have come to the conclusion, after scouring Ravelry for projects that fit just this criteria, that that is not always the case. And actually, if you just switch your perspective a little bit in terms of what you're expecting out of your project, you might come to realize that the subtlety of beautiful texture knit in really dark yarn is something very special indeed. Now, before we dive right into that subject, I do want to remind you that I am the owner and dyer of Fiber for the People yarn, and I have a shop update coming next Wednesday, which is not my usual shop update day. That is usually Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. However, it is next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It will be a collection of 5 solid colorways on beautiful 100% alpaca sport weight yarn, as well as skeins of kid mohair silk inspired by the photo that you see here. Definitely mark your calendars and check out the update next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And also head over to woolneedleshands.com to not only submit a suggestion for an upcoming midweek ramble, but to check out the merch shop. We have some new merch in the shop, including Knitter Woman and Knitter Man tees that are really fun, and I love the way that they look right now, and I'm loving the colors. So definitely check that out. It's a fantastic way to support the work that I'm doing here at Wool Needles Hands. Let's go ahead and dive into 6 sweater patterns that I think challenge the notion that you can't knit texture with dark yarn. You guys, I realized my candle wasn't lit. This is not ambiance. We need ambiance. Okay, we have ambiance now. Let's get into it. First pattern. All right, the first pattern I want to share with you here is by Caitlin Hunter, and it's called the Gloam. Now, what I love about this, and as it relates to this video here, is that her sample featured in the project pattern page of this particular design is knit in a black yarn. It's almost like kind of a cast iron color, and it's really beautiful. I think part of the issue that we run into here is we just don't see that color represented in sample photos, and so we don't really know how that texture or how those designs are going to look with that dark yarn. I appreciate that Caitlin Hunter chose to feature this with dark yarn to show you that, hey, if you love dark garments and knits, you can absolutely knit them yourself and still get all the benefits of that beautiful texture. Now, this is really beautiful, and I will tell you as we look through this here that yes, the texture of the sweater doesn't pop like it would if it were in a really light color or something like a camel or even a caramel. It is darker, so there's going to be more shadow to the texture. The point that I'm making with this here today is that you get a really lovely, subtle texture, and when you're standing there looking at the garment in a photo like this where you can zoom in, or even if you were in person and you were looking at the garment that the person has on their body, you could see all of the nuances in the texture, and the fact that it's subtle because of the dark yarn would add a little bit of an air of mystery and just real, I don't know, I guess nuance is really the best word, but something that just looks really chic in my opinion. So yeah, no going into it that this texture is not going to pop like it would if it were on a bright color. I completely agree. but there's something beautiful to the subtlety here. So this is the Gloam by Caitlin Hunter. I love this, like, kind of, it's not a wrap cardigan, but it's really like beautiful, oversized, kind of like a wrap cardigan. There's no buttons down the front, but it's really lovely. Those wide sleeves. Look at that beautiful, subtle texture that you see there. You know it's there. It looks nice and cozy and warm. Ugh, right here, the way that the light hits it. It's really beautiful. So this is all, I don't believe there's any cabling here. Let me check. I'm not 100% sure. I think that those are all knits and purls, just creating really lovely, almost like a Guernsey texture across. And it's just gorgeous. Subtlety, guys. That's the key. Subtlety and nuance. And striving for subtlety and nuance in your knitwear is, in my opinion, something beautiful, because those are going to be pieces that you wear time and time again. Okay, this next sweater is one that I've had my eye on for quite some time, and I actually attempted to cast onto this a couple of years ago and just never got around to finishing it, but it's one I want to pick up again. And this is called the Sumac, and this is by Orlana Suka, or Orlane Suka. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce that, but this is a fantastic example of how those beautiful knits and purl texture designs can really pop in the right light on a dark sweater like this. If you look at this particular sample photo here, the way she's turned to that raking light and you see it raking over the front of her sweater, you guys, it is so special. So you might see a person standing there wearing a sweater like this, and in certain lights it looks like it's just an indiscernible textural pattern, but then they turn and they catch that raking light and you see the design come to life, and it's really a special experience. And also wearing a sweater like that, having those little subtle details in it, it goes with everything, but it has a little extra element that makes it special, especially if you knit it yourself. And I think this is an example of where that really just makes for a very special garment. So this is the Sumac. You can see it on the pattern page in all kinds of colors. I mean, I would even argue that this one here that's shown in just a basic ecru color, the texture is just as discernible here as it is in this darker color here in that lighting. Of course, if she's in a dark room, it's going to be difficult to see. It's dark yarn, and we're not trying to draw a complete comparison, but I am trying to say that in really lovely lighting, those textural details stand out, and the nuance and subtlety just make it very special. So this is the Sumac by Orlana Suka. Not exactly sure how to pronounce that, and it is gorgeous. This is a worsted weight sweater. Oh, I really love that. When you're looking for projects and you think, okay, I want to knit this project in a particular yarn, a dark yarn, a red yarn, a green yarn, look in the project photos of folks who have knit that project to see if they've knit one in a similar color or in a similar style of yarn, and it gives you a visual representation of what that could look like. That's actually exactly what I did here, is I went into some of these sweater patterns and I looked through the project pages of other folks to see if anybody else had knit these sweaters in dark yarns, and that's how I managed to find these really great examples. This one is actually the sample photo, but there was a photo of another person who had knit this particular sweater in a dark yarn. It doesn't, oh, the colorway Brooklyn Tweed Arbor in the colorway Fleet, which I'm assuming is this dark navy color here, and I thought it looked fantastic. Yeah, it's gorgeous. So the Sumac is another really great option for your lovely dark yarn. Okay, so the next sweater I'm going to show you here is actually the project page of a Ravelry user named Moon Sister. This is her version of the Cargill sweater by Rebecca Clow, who has the Creabea knitting podcast. She is just on fire right now with her sweater pattern designs, and I'm loving them. This one is absolutely gorgeous. She came out with this one I think at the beginning of this year. But it's such a beautiful design with really gorgeous texture. And this particular Ravelry user, or knitter I should say, knit this in what looks like a dark, almost like oxblood black color. It's so beautiful. It reminds me of a colorway that I dye called Kalamata. And oh, I don't know, maybe even a little bit of a, it's so beautiful, really rich and dark, but look how that texture just pops in the raking light, the sunlight coming over the sweater. I think it's really classy. Absolutely lovely. So that is the Cargill sweater. Lots of really nice kind of ribbed texture that's happening there with that particular stitch pattern, and it plays so well with a really lovely dark yarn. So that is the Cargill sweater by Rebecca Clow. Okay, the next sweater that I'm sharing here is from a knitter called Little Canadian on Ravelry. This is the YARNS sweater by Agio Knit. This is a design that is not shown particularly on a dark yarn. However, when I went through the project pages of people that had knit this sweater, I came across Little Canadian's version of this, and it's knit with a really dark yarn, and I think it's stunning. Now, this particular sweater is a cabled sweater. You have lots of horizontal cables running across, and it's really beautiful. And I know that cables cause you to be a little bit more weary about working with dark yarn because you know all the work that goes into knitting cables, you know, for some of us, for most of us, whatever, who knows. And you want to make sure that that's really going to show up. And I think that it shows up here, again, maybe not as much as it would show up on a really light yarn, but what it does do is it provides really gorgeous texture. You need to be nearby to really appreciate what you're seeing, and I think there's something really special about that. There's a lot of, you know, subtlety and a lot of nuance, and those are the two key words for this video when it comes to knitting texture with dark yarn. We're going for subtlety, we're going for nuance, and this is just absolutely beautiful. So this is called the YARNS sweater, and this version here is by Little Canadian, and that really lovely dark navy yarn. It's almost like a purpley navy. It's very special. So yes, you can knit cables with dark yarn and have it look really beautiful. Okay, the Ingrid Slipover by Petite Knit is the next one here, and I'm gonna bundle into this the Ingrid pullover as well. So you have an Ingrid pullover or Ingrid sweater, and then you have the Ingrid Slipover, and they are both designs by Petite Knit. They kind of represent that like classic Gansey or Guernsey, however you pronounce it, sweater, lots of knits and purl texture, and it's really beautiful. I'm going to show the Ingrid Slipover here as it's featured on Petite Knit's project page or pattern page, because she features it here in what is essentially a cast iron black color, and I think it's really gorgeous. Look at that texture. Look, she's wearing it with like a black 3/4 length sleeve t-shirt underneath. It's very black forward, everything she has on right now, and I love that. I love the way this looks in a black yarn. I love that that texture is not popping out in my face, but that when I look at it, I can see that it's a beautiful textured sweater. It's intriguing. It's got a mysterious vibe to it. It's just really lovely. What are the two words? Subtlety and nuance, and this is packed with it. This is Petite Knit's sample for the Ingrid Slipover, but I want to show you this project that was knit by a Raveler or a Ravelry knitter named am.knits, and this is her Ingrid sweater, knit in what looks like a black yarn. And even that, like the way she's wearing it here with this, you know, this lovely denim that she has on, it looks so comfortable, so cozy. It has very like Parisian chic winter vibes or fall vibes. It looks like it's got a mohair paired with it. I'm kind of like dead right now. I think that's gorgeous. Yeah, that's mohair in there. Oh my gosh. You guys, how do you see, look at this, you know, bird's eye picture on this white blanket here. Hello, and she's following the rules. Look, she's got some needles that are easy to see. Oh, that is just stunning. Loving that. So that is the Ingrid sweater, and then the Ingrid Slipover. Both of those are being knit right here in these instances with black yarn, and you guys, it is absolutely gorgeous. Okay, this next sweater, I have to admit, I wouldn't really look twice at this sweater. It's not my style. Well, I don't know. There's just something about this sweater in the sample that I see here that I'm just not all that into. I don't know what it is. It's just not typically my thing. However, I stopped here because I wanted to see if this particular sweater, which is the Afra by Isabel Kramer, had been knit by someone using a dark yarn, to see if it would pique my interest any more than it is right now, which is not much by the standard sample photo. And that's nothing against Isabel Kramer. She's got gorgeous designs. This one just doesn't tick the boxes for me. So I went through some of these projects and I found one by Yuki Nei, and it's knit with black yarn, and it's really, really quite lovely. And also too, I just love the way it looks with some nice denim. She's wearing some nice jeans here. Yep, some really nice dark blue jeans. The neckline of her version is a little higher and tighter than the one on Isabel Kramer, which I really appreciate, and maybe that's why I like this so much. But look at that sweater. A gorgeous black sweater with some lovely texture on the front. Those are some really pretty cables going on there. You guys, it's chic AF. Oh, and look at it with these really nice, like, plaid pants. So stylish. So that is the Afra by Isabel Kramer. Another really great option for knitting texture with black yarn. And you guys, these are only 6 options. There are lots more, and there's more in the Ravelry favorites bundle that I created for this video, which I will link down below. What I would encourage you to do is, if you have some really lovely dark yarn in your stash, whether it's black or dark green or a purple, is to find a pattern that intrigues you and look in the project pages from folks who have knit that design and see if anybody has knit the design with a dark yarn to give you a little bit of an idea of how that looks with dark yarn, and if you're happy with how well it's represented in that, you know, particular depth of color, I should say. One of the projects that I knit in the not too distant past was the Magnolia Bloom sweater. Now, this is not black yarn. This is a really lovely kind of timber green yarn. This is the Endor colorway by Fiber for the People. And I remember when I knit this sweater, a few people in the comments of the video said, you know, I'm really concerned that all that lovely lace work and baubles is going to be lost in the dark color of the yarn. And I've received a similar comment to that effect in my most recent podcast episode where I shared my sweater number 18 that I'm knitting in kind of like a darkish teal color. Someone expressing concern that maybe the texture would get lost in the color of the yarn. And that always causes me to take a moment to just kind of wonder if that's something that a lot of people are concerned by, because I love dark clothing. I love to wear black. I love to wear dark colors, and I love dark sweaters with texture, and it's never really bothered me all that much. This is my Magnolia Bloom, and I'm just going to show it to you here so that you can see. If you look at it straight on, where you don't have a lot of raking light, of course, you're not going to see everything as if you would if I had something much lighter up here. But when you turn it just so, and you catch that lovely raking light, look how beautiful that is to catch it like that. You get some really nice subtlety straight on like this, but you turn ever so slightly and you reveal this really beautiful texture. And this is one of my favorite sweaters. It is so soft. I get tons of compliments on it. It's going to look dark because of the dynamic range of the camera. It's all very technical and whatever. But if you were standing here with me, looking at me straight on, you would see this really beautiful design happening here. And you would appreciate that subtlety and nuance. And I am here for that. I love all of that. You know, there are so many opportunities in knitting and knitting patterns to really kind of go for broke and just add a lot of pizzazz and style elements and color and all of this. But there's nothing more satisfying than knitting a piece, a sweater, whatever it is, that's classic and nuanced and subtle that you know you're going to reach for over and over and over again. And I think that's where it's at. In my opinion, that's where it's at. We want to have those items in our wardrobe because they're the ones that we have warm and fuzzy thoughts about. So those are 6 patterns that I wanted to share with you to inspire you to look further when it comes to what to knit with those dark yarns that you might have in your stash. And don't just settle on stockinette projects. Break out of your comfort zone and give something with texture a try. And if you want to just kind of get your feet wet, dip your toes a little, do something like a hat or a pair of mittens and see if you like it. And then from there, you can kind of decide to make darker yarn part of your stash and projects with darker yarn part of your knitting repertoire. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. If you took any value from today's video or enjoyed yourself at any time, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Definitely subscribe and click that bell icon so that you can be notified anytime I upload new content, which is every Wednesday and every Sunday for the knitting podcast. Until I see you again on Sunday's episode of the podcast, happy knitting, happy making, happy whatever it is that you're doing. Take care, be well, and I will see you soon. Bye.